Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. We've got a good episode for you today. It's going to be a nice leisurely episode because we don't have a lot of bad news Bears going on. We got winning Hawks, winning Bulls. First, I want to talk about our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. The Ice Hogs have a couple of upcoming games at the BMO Harris Bank Center in Rockford, Illinois. Friday, January 16th versus the Iowa Wild. Game begins at 7 p.m. Iowa makes its final visit of the season to Rockford as the Ice Hogs and Wild square up once again at the BMO. Fans can gear up for the rest of the winter by taking advantage of the Ice Hogs winter hat giveaway. The first 1,000 guests 21 and over will pick up an Ice Hogs winter hat, compliments of Bud Light. Those 21 and over can enjoy live music, free appetizers, and drink specials at the Blue Flames Lounge pregame party. Doors open at 5:15 p.m. For tickets and more information, definitely check out icehogs.com. I know I said we're not going to have a lot of bad news Bears talk, but this isn't bad news Bears. We're going to start off with the Chicago Bears because as of now, we've got a new general manager, about to have a new head coach, and a new philosophy within the organization. I really think we're going to start to see a turnaround. If nothing else, this is nothing but positive energy that I'm trying to spew out into the airwaves for you to listen to. Because if we don't believe, then what makes us different than Philadelphia Eagle fans? And boo Philadelphia Eagles fans. So, my wife is a Philadelphia Eagles fan and she just walked in and gave me the finger. So, we do have a new general manager. We have Ryan Pace. So he was sort of a dark horse candidate. I know we talked with Lester Wilfong from Windy City Gridiron last week. And I think we were both pretty convinced that the Bears were going to hire Chris Ballard away from the Kansas City Chiefs because he had such a history with the Chicago Bears. He had been there with Jerry Angelo. He was there the first year of Phil Emery. He's been in the Chicago Bears organization for about 12 years. And I think what it came down to is when we stopped and think about it is maybe he knew where too many of the skeletons were buried. Maybe he didn't say the things that the McCaskey family wanted to hear when they were hiring when they're hiring the new general manager. I mean, is that the case? Or is it the case of maybe they knew where all of Chris Ballard's skeletons were hidden? So it's a situation we're never going to know, or maybe not for a long time, because Chris Ballard is still highly regarded as far as a general manager position, but maybe it was just a little too familiar with the Chicago Bears and with Chris Ballard. And they mutually knew too much about each other. So it didn't work out. But in swoops Ryan Pace, and he was a little bit of a dark horse. I just figured with his age, he wasn't going to get the proper shake, so I didn't even research that much into him. I'm not a Saints fan, as you know. I'm a Chicago Bears fan, so I don't keep up with their front office people that often. And so looking at Ryan Pace, I mean, he played at Eastern Illinois, where Tony Romo got his start, where Sean Payton got his start. And his wife and his wife's family are all Chicago Bears fans from the Chicagoland area, which is a positive, because really try going to Thanksgiving if you're the general manager of the Bears and you are not winning games. You are not welcome. And he's a kid that, I call him a kid because for the first time in my life, I'm talking about a general manager that's younger than I am. It makes me feel old. Anyway, he started off, took his first job with the Saints. He went went to his interview in a beat-up car that he drove down to the job interview, and he busted his butt and worked his way all the way up till he was a player personnel guy. So he was up there as far as all the decisions is drafting players, signing free agents, evaluating their own players, and things like that. So they're apparently in New Orleans, the scouting departments for both pro and college are all wrapped into one. So he was deeply involved in all of that. He comes with a lot of praise. Sean Payton loves him. The general manager of the New Orleans Saints, he's in love with him. Everybody that has worked with him and worked under him or worked over him, they've all said the same thing. The guy's a hard worker. He's really bright. He's got a great football mind. So it's exciting to hear that, because he's blending. We had Jerry Angelo on the one side that was using all football instincts, and then you had Phil Emery on the other side, who was Mr. Analytics. And it seems like Ryan Pace is going to be somewhere in the middle. He's going to utilize all of the modern kind of sabermetrics type things, for lack of a better word. He's going to utilize all of that stuff, but he's going to really go with his gut too, and evaluate guys by using the eyeball test and seeing what you see. How are they going to fit into our system? And he said a lot of the right things in his press conference too. Establishing a winning program, finding a coach that understands the philosophy that he wants to instill, and staying the course. Having a short-term plan and a long-term plan. I really feel like in a long time we haven't had that long-term plan. And that's really what you need to have a sustainable and successful organization. You need a long-term plan as well. And you need short-term fixes for certain things, but then there's the long-term goals. How do you do that? How do you build a winning organization? Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look at the Baltimore Ravens. Look at the Green Bay Packers. Look at the New England Patriots. Those teams, they might have turnover. They might lose players to injury. They might lose players to free agency. They might lose players to retirement. However they lose them is they just replace them and everybody steps up. It's one thing to be Phil Emery and say, next man up as far as a position, but it's another thing is to actually have a player who can step right in and play the position, and have a coaching staff that's not afraid to play that player. You can say next man up as far as Bears safeties go, but you're so thin. You could say next man up when Lance Briggs gets hurt, but is who do you have? There's nobody there. The cupboard's bare. So having this long-term plan, you see in advance of where your weaknesses are going to be. I mean, you can never, if you're a New England Patriots, you can't ever assume that Tom Brady's going to go down or anticipate that. But you have a system that's good and a backup quarterback that may not be Tom Brady, but he knows the system and he can go in there and play it. That's what the Bears are planning to do, hopefully, is establish this long-term plan, find a coach that's in line with that plan, work together to put all the pieces into place, make sure they draft well, keep drafting well so you can keep these guys coming. You lose Lance Briggs and Peanut Tillman, all right, you replace them with this person and this person. You don't know what you're going to do quarterback long-term. All right, start coming up with a plan now. Or is Jay Cutler the quarterback of the future? So those are the types of things. Is you want a sustainable program. Every year you have the Ravens and the Steelers and the Packers. They're all in the playoffs. And when they don't make the playoffs, it's surprising. They don't fall to the bottom of the pile. Even when they don't make it, they're in the hunt until the end. It's just you want to stop the embarrassment. You want to stop the embarrassment that the Chicago Bears have had. So now that we have this general manager in place, he's got a lot of work in front of him because you've got the Senior Bowl that's coming up in like a week. Actually, from the time you hear this podcast, it'll be a week. So you have that in Mobile, Alabama, as you have the Senior Bowl. So he's not even going to be able to have like a full staff installed by the time he goes down there. So he's going to have to rely on this coach or the scouting staff that they have, and keep the hope that the whatever coach they hire is going to be able to watch the film of it and keep up with it on his own time, so they have a plan of who they want to draft. And you've got the scouting combine is right around the corner. We're about a month away from that. And then after that, you've got pro days starting. The NFL draft's coming up in a couple of short months. So these things are coming up really quickly, and it takes a lot. I'm a guy that watches quite a bit of film, and they watch much more film than I do on these players. So you're watching them and you're evaluating 200 guys. So you've really got to put a lot of time into this. So hiring a new general manager is just it's a big endeavor that you just can't just jump into. So hopefully they got the right guy. And now his search is on. He's got the full final say on who the head coach is going to be. And some of the names that have been tossed around is Adam Gase, the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. And given how they sputtered towards the end, and even with Peyton Manning as your quarterback, can you really go Adam Gase? They were really looking at Gary Kubiak, the offensive coordinator of the Ravens and former head coach of the Texans. But apparently he announced today that he's going to be staying in Baltimore as their coordinator. So you got to cross him off the list. Mike Shanahan, he's a name I discussed before. He's a little old for this league. He didn't do well in Washington. He didn't do so well at the end of his tenure in Denver either. I can't see that as what you want to do. If you hire Mike Shanahan, what you're saying is that Jay Cutler is more important than staying the course of the team. You're hiring a coach for this one particular player, and that's really not where you want to be at the Chicago Bears. You want to find a coach that's going to win. And if Jay Cutler's not in the plan at that point, then you move on from Jay Cutler. Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals, he was a really hot name for a while, but his defense started sputtering out at the end and giving up a lot of points. I think that's really hurt him. And I think a lot of teams are going to say he's not ready yet. They don't want to jump at Todd Bowles. Then you've got Terrell Austin, who's the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He took a really talented Detroit Lions defense that was really lacking discipline, and he got a lot out of them this year. You knew that front four was phenomenal. He got a lot out of them, but he really squeezed a lot out of that secondary. So that's a possibility. The only issue is the guy has very little experience as far as being a coordinator, let alone being a head coach. So you're really hiring somebody, promoting them a little quickly. And I think the Bears have had enough of that, where they've hired somebody too quickly into a spot that they may not have deserved. I think you leave him as the coordinator in Detroit. Which leaves you to Dan Quinn, who's the defensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. Again, he's like Terrell Austin. He's another guy that doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's done an absolutely phenomenal job in Seattle. Comes from a winning program. They won the Super Bowl last year, and they've got to be considered as one of the favorites to win it this year. It's bringing that defense back for the Chicago Bears. That's a good way to win you points if you're Ryan Pace. So the only problem is that you can't talk to him or interview him anymore until after the Seahawks are out of the playoffs. That could be this weekend. That could be until after the Super Bowl. So you're basically setting yourself up that the earliest you could interview him is the week of the Senior Bowl. That's a little tough, especially since you have several other teams that are in need of a coach. The Jets are in need of a coach. Denver is now in need of a coach. Atlanta's in need of a coach. Buffalo hired Rex Ryan. Who else? The 49ers need a coach. These are all teams that need a coach and are very interested in Dan Quinn. So it's one of those things, is if you decide he's your guy and you wait all this time to get him and then you lose out to somebody else, that's a tough pill to swallow. So you need to be able to make sure that you see who your man is and you go get him. And I don't see a lot of activity with with interviewing. So who knows what the Bears are thinking. And one final guy is I forgot to mention, is Doug Marrone, the former head coach of Buffalo Bills, and he had that team playing well for Buffalo. I mean, they had the first winning record that they've had in a decade with Marrone there, and they even did it with Kyle Orton as the quarterback. So he's another interesting name. He'll definitely be bringing discipline to the Chicago Bears, that much needed discipline. But whatever they do, I think what's important is you establish this defense, because fans of the Chicago Bears want to see a good defense, and the last 2 years has just been an embarrassment. I mean, absolutely embarrassing. So the first things they're going to have to do is shore up this defense and get back to the running game, because A, that's what wins championships, and B, that's what Chicago Bears fans want to see. I guess I'll jump really quickly into Cubs and Sox news, because I'm not spending a lot of time on it. We're in the dead part of the hot stove league, because either the big names that have already been poached or the ones that are waiting for a little bit closer to the end of the hot stove league. So what you have is Sporting News picked the Chicago Cubs to be their 2015 World Series winner. I can't for the life of me fathom that that's realistic. I mean, it's possible, because they've put together a good team. They've improved the pitching staff. They've improved their defense. They've improved the offense. I mean, anything's possible, especially with a new skipper. It's possible, but me thinks that they're going with the Back to the Future pick from Back to the Future, where they had the Chicago Cubs winning the 2015 World Series, and also they're trying to sell their brand. Whenever you jump in and say Chicago Cubs will win the World Series, a lot of people around the country are going to turn their heads, not just in Chicago, but everywhere in baseball land. They're going to turn their heads and say, whoa, did you say the Cubs are going to win the World Series? Because A, they haven't won in a long time, and B, they've had a terrible team for the last 5-6 years. So it's really going to turn heads. And you're just trying to, get more people to read the Sporting News. And then the White Sox news is Adam Dunn officially retired. He's done with baseball. I know White Sox fans aren't always as happy to hear his name as maybe Reds fans are, but he if you really just strip down his numbers, he wasn't that bad for the White Sox. He had the one bad season, but other than that, he really wasn't terrible for the White Sox. So I think fans were just mad because of that first season with them. And then one last tidbit is Baseball Prospectus put out their minor league rankings, finally got around to the White Sox. They named Tim Anderson as the number one prospect in the White Sox organization. Again, I don't know if this was to what they did with the Chicago Cubs, and then they named Addison Russell as their number one Cubs prospect over Chris Bryant. I don't know if that's a little of this type of thing, but they named Tim Anderson as the number one prospect over Carlos Rodon. So that's something to think about. Is do they think that highly of him, or does Rodon not as impressive as a lot of people thought he was going to be, and being major league ready for the start of this season? or if it's just baseball prospectus being baseball prospectus and trying to get people to read. We shall find out sooner rather than later. Let's move on to the Hawks. And so I know it was a bit a while now, and we talked about the Hawks, and really what's frustrating is they were within the playoffs, but they were right at the bottom towards the wild card end of the playoff spectrum. And they did that after during the 2011 season, after they won the cup, is they, due to various reasons, they ended up not playing that well the next season. And what happened was they had to expend so much energy to get into the playoffs that first round was just a nightmare, and they didn't make it out. And they started doing that a little bit towards the beginning of the season, but they've been on cruise control for the most part lately. They're only 2 points out of first place in all of the conference. And as it stands right now, if the playoffs were to start today, they would be playing the St. Louis Blues in the first round of the playoffs. So they're just 2 points behind Nashville and Anaheim, at teams that both teams which they've beaten. So that's a good sign. But the big issue that we've had lately is they've had to come from behind a lot in games. And it's like they're not playing a full 60 minutes. They start off bad, come on strong. They start strong but fade at the end. They have a mental lapse in the second period. They haven't had consistent play for 60 minutes. And we'd think with a veteran coach and a veteran team that you're going to have the ability to play a full 60 minutes. And I know that they've played a lot of games in a few days over the last couple weeks, and they haven't had a lot of rest. That's part of hockey. It's you have these stretches where you're playing a lot of games, and you've just got to be ready every single night. And I know it's difficult, but they haven't done it in a while. So they need to play the full 60 minutes. We're part of the reason that they have been so great this year, even in offensive slumps, is the fantastic goal play. And not just with Corey Crawford, but Scott Darling, when he stepped up, has looked good. He's looked much better in Chicago than he has in Rockford. And that's not to take anything away from what he's done in Rockford. He's just looked phenomenal with the Blackhawks, except for maybe one start. Antti Ranta has played very well as well. And but after Crawford came back from that injury, he was still playing well, but not to the level that he was before the injury, and he's just finally starting to get back to that. He's finally starting to turn it on. As if he looks at the last few games, he's been lights out. He's looked phenomenal. He's making amazing stops. He's not playing Olay with the glove hand, which is a Corey Crawford kind of standard move, is keeps his elbow pinned to the side of his body and looks like a T-Rex out there with his glove. He hasn't been doing that. He's been extending that arm and getting it out there to get a full range with the glove side. He's always been great on stick side. He's just been looking phenomenal. And now that he seems like he's got the ankle back under him, he's really, really playing well. So can he continue, or is, now that he's really healthy and able to play on two full 100% ankles, is Coach Q just going to ride him with like the hot hand? We're finally starting to see Brian Bickle play. He's such an anomaly. Like, he can go on these amazing hot streaks, and you can ride him. Look at a couple of years ago in the playoffs. He can just really turn it on, but then he can completely disappear. He's such an enigma. I mean, I wish I had the physical size and ability that he has. I feel like sometimes it's a mental thing, because he's definitely a talented enough guy to be able to do things, and he seems to not be able to do it all the time. And looking at the Wild, he had a phenomenal game against the Wild the other night. And he was quoted after the game as saying, "I wish I played them 82 games," which is a little bit dig at them, but it was a little bit of a dig at himself too, because he knows that he's not playing as well, and he plays much better against the Wild for whatever reason. He needs to turn it up, because he's going to be a key if the Blackhawks are to win another Stanley Cup here. And just when Teuvo started to really figure out the AHL game and come into his own, and I know we talked about it before, but he really looked like he was a little bit lost out on the ice in the AHL for the first part of this season. He finally started to figure it out right around the Christmas break. Started to figure it out. Became much more aggressive, much more offensive minded. Seemed like he was getting used to the larger ice surface in the American style, or the North American style of hockey. And then the Blackhawks plucked him after Versteeg's injury, and plucked him to come up and play on the big stage. And he really is looking much more comfortable at this level too. He still hasn't scored a goal yet, but he's looked very comfortable, and he's being aggressive. He's going after rebounds. And he's looking much more like a professional hockey player. And if he keeps playing like this, I'm sure there are going to be some questions of what they're going to do once Versteeg comes back. Versteeg's looked like a much better guy than he did last year. So I don't see them not playing him. That leaves you with, where do you put Teuvo? Do you put him on the third line, fourth line, or do you send him back down to Rockford and see what he can do down there? It's an interesting thing. Do you try him out on the second line and see what he can do with Patrick Kane? I mean, I don't know if you do, because it might be a little bit too finesse, too small of a line, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because he has played well. Then we've got the official All-Star game for hockey, the All-Star announcements, and it's official. We've got Jonathan Toews in the All-Star game, Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, Corey Crawford. Basically, one player shy of having the whole first line of the Blackhawks be in the All-Star game. And really, I know if you read comments on news articles and things like that, is the hockey world's a little bit annoyed by this. But realistically, who other than Brent Seabrook who do you take out of there? Duncan Keith is a great defenseman. He deserves to be an All-Star. Corey Crawford's playing amazing this year. Patrick Kane's third in points and is a fan favorite, and he's a really great player. And Jonathan Toews is quintessential hockey player. He plays every facet of the game, plays it well. And he's the captain of one of the best teams in all of hockey. So it's how do you take away from that? I see Brent Seabrook because on paper and seeing highlights, sure, he might look good and looking at numbers, but as somebody that watches the game, sometimes you just scratch your head and you're like, what the hell are you doing, Seabrook? I find myself saying that a lot. I mean, multiple times a game, you're like, oh my God, Seabrook, what are you doing? Blah! But it is what it is. So other than Seabrook, the rest of the guys are just totally deserving of being the All-Star honors. What else about the Blackhawks? Just look tired. They've got a couple of nights off now before their next game. I think that's going to do the team a world of good, is getting that rest. And finally, something I saw today that I wasn't planning to talk about because I didn't see it until today is hockeyfights.com made a list of their top 10 fights of this year so far. So we're about halfway through the season, and they made their top 10 fights. Who was number one? I'll give you a hint. Plays for the Blackhawks. So from November 16th, 2014, it's the Andrew Shaw fight against Russell. And it's a phenomenal fight. I don't know if I did miss that game or if it was part of the when I walked out, because I have a newborn daughter, so sometimes I have to walk out of the game and change a diaper or get a pacifier or whatever I have to do. I don't know if I missed that or if it's one of the games I happened to miss because I was working, but I went and rewatched the fight today, and it was pretty awesome. I wish they had that one mic'd up because they went from zero to fighting in no time. The play was going on, and you just see them skate towards each other, drop the gloves, and go at it. Russell, he's throwing some quick jabs and quick shots in there, and Shaw has thrown uppercuts and haymakers and finally throws him to the ground. And based on the Fans of Hockey Fights, which is a great site, and I love hockey fighting, and so hockeyfights.com is a good site. But they had almost 80% of their viewers thought Andrew Shaw won the fight, and so that makes Andrew Shaw the champion of the best fight of the year so far. So congratulations to Andrew Shaw. The last thing I'm going to talk about is our beloved Chicago Bulls. And I don't even know where to start with the Chicago Bulls. I really wanted to have Gary on the show today, but he is in Disney World with his family. So I'm happy for him because he's been sending me pictures of him with his son and his wife. And they are really enjoying their time down there. So I'm happy for Gary because he's down there in nice, lovely Florida weather, and I'm here in Chicago in the cold and the sleet and the hail and the rain and whatever garbage weather we get here in the winter. But this is a tale of two Bulls teams. You've got the one that the last game just completely dominated the Milwaukee Bucks, and this isn't the Milwaukee Bucks of last season. This Milwaukee Bucks is in the mix for a playoff spot. They're only one seed behind the Bulls if the playoffs were to start today. And if the playoffs were to start today, they would be playing each other in the first round of the playoffs. It would be the Bulls versus the Bucks. So they completely dominated the Bucks. But then they got crushed by Utah and Washington. They eked out wins from the Celtics and the Pacers. And the Pacers are terrible. The Celtics are terrible, and they eked out wins against those teams. So I don't really know what's going on. Derrick Rose is in a slump again. Dunleavy's hurt. Joakim Noah is just not Joakim Noah. It's this team is just not playing well, and it seems that they rely on big efforts from one or two guys to fuel them past these teams, and that's not going to be the way to win the playoffs. They need this to be a team effort, and that's the way that this season started off. Is they played as a team, and that's when they're playing their best basketball. Is they're playing as a team, and if that means that you're going to have to sit Joakim Noah, then you have to do that. I'm not sure if it's injuries that's causing him to play like this, because he's apparently nursing some sort of knee injury, but he's just looked bad. Versus the Wizards and the Bucks and the Jazz, he's just looked bad. He's almost absent from the box score. Last year, he was NBA All-First Team center. This year, he's not looking that good. You've got Rose off to a slow start. He missed another game with knee soreness. And the positive is that this was actually the first injury or game he missed due to injury in 24 games. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're a Chicago Bulls fan and you're looking at Derrick Rose, that's phenomenal. But to this point, he's averaging just under 17 points a game, 40% shooting, 4.8 assists a game in 29 minutes. So the good news, I guess, is that he has got a lot of room to improve. And if you have Jimmy Butler playing the way he's playing, Paul Gasol playing the way he's playing, and you finally get Derrick Rose back on track, suddenly this becomes a powerhouse team. And you're not going to get blown out by Utah. You're not going to look laughable in front of Washington. You're going to blow out the Celtics. You're going to blow out the Pacers. You're about to get Dunleavy back in a few games, and that's really going to help you because regardless that Mike Dunleavy is not a superstar in this league, he's a competent scorer. He's a fairly adequate defender, and he's a guy that can put minutes in there and keep you in this ball game, or even help you take the lead. And that's really trusted by Tom Thibodeau. And so you're going to get him back from an ankle injury soon. That's going to help you. But earlier in the season, we were talking about slow starts and, lack of rebounding that was really hurting your team. And now it's slow starts and poor shooting. You're falling into a hole early. If we look at the Wizards game, they fell behind to start the game 10-2. Against Utah, they fell behind 8-1. Against the Rockets, they fell behind 25-16. They were down 6 to the Celtics at the beginning of the game. You can't start off on these cold streaks and then shoot poorly and think you're going to win these games. They finally reversed that when they came out against the Bucks and just completely dominated right from the get-go of that game. I think they were up by 12, 15 points in the first quarter. Most of that was Paul Gasol. He dropped 46 points, and just watching that game, it's laughable to think that the Lakers got rid of Paul Gasol because they thought he was done for. But then they went and signed Carlos Boozer, who really is done for. It's laughable because Paul Gasol is playing really well, and he's been a godsend for this team. So what kind of things do the Bulls need to do? First of all, they got to get healthy, because you can't have Joakim Noah playing like this and expect to win. You need Dunleavy back to add to your bench, maybe even come in and start. You need Derrick Rose to come back and play 80% of Derrick Rose, even if he never plays like Derrick Rose could play. You need to keep him on the court. He needs to be shooting better. And I don't know if part of that knee stiffness is causing the shots because he's not elevating like he should. I can't say for certain. You hope that it's just a little bit of stiffness that's preventing him from playing well. And you need to get back to playing defense and playing a team basketball game. You got to get better starts. You got to get on the boards earlier. You need to rebound. Need to get better shots. And if you're not hitting shots, you need to find higher percentage shots and get out there. Don't settle for these jump shooting. When you're not hitting shots, don't just keep parking it and shooting three balls. That's not how you're going to win these games. So they've got all the pieces there. And they've got the talent to be able to beat anybody in this league, whether it be one game or a series. Now they just have to keep the injuries down, keep the minutes down, keep the rotation going, and continue to play as a team. That's where they're going to win the ball games. And one last thing, another note that I just saw today is it looks like the Bulls are going to be offering the max deal for Jimmy Butler. So they're going to be able to offer him 5 years as opposed to 4 of any other team. And we're probably going to see a contract of $80 to $91 million that he's going to get. So 5 years, $80 to $91 million. That's a lot of money, especially considering that what the contract they offered him in the offseason was 4-year, $40 million. So you stretch that out, that would have been like 5-year, $50 million. So he's going to be looking to get another $30 to $40 million more than that contract they offered him. And that was the Bulls shooting themselves in the foot. Is if you would have offered him something more fair, like 65, you would have saved yourself $15 to $25 million in salary, and you would have still locked up your guy. And that's just the Bulls' mismanagement there. And that's all I really have to say about the Bulls. We'll keep this episode pretty short. Next week, I'm hoping to have some more guests on. Hoping to have Chris Block from Third Man In and then the Committed Indian. Hopefully have Gary on, talk the Bulls. If not, maybe we'll get one of our friends from Bow on. That's going to wrap it up. Again, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. Check out icehogs.com for tickets and more information. And until next time, thanks for listening and bear down.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.